It was supposed to be an ordinary day in court, quiet, controlled, and respectful. But within seconds, everything changed. As the judge read through the final notes of the session, a tense silence filled the room. The air was heavy, almost electric. Then suddenly a loud slap echoed through the courtroom. All eyes turned toward the sound. A police officer, a man in uniform, sworn to protect, had just struck a black woman in front of the judge, lawyers, and cameras. People froze. You could hear a pin drop. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. The woman stood still, in shock, her eyes filled with disbelief and humiliation. This wasn't happening in a dark alley or behind closed doors. This was a court of law, a place meant to deliver justice, not violence. Some tried to speak, others reached for their phones. The judge banged the gavel, shouting for order, but the chaos was already unleashed. The woman, trembling, held her cheek, her voice breaking as she asked, "Did you just hit me?" That one sentence, raw and heartbreaking, became the line that shook America. Within minutes, that clip left the courtroom walls and began spreading across social media. Millions watched, rewatched, and raged. How could this happen in 2025, inside a courtroom, under the eyes of justice? But what the world didn't know was the story behind this slap. A story that went far beyond one officer, one woman, or one courtroom. A story about power, prejudice, and the centuries-old struggle that refuses to stay silent. Because this wasn't just about a slap. It was about what it represented. The painful reminder that even today, justice isn't blind. It still sees color. Before the shocking slap, she wasn't just a name or a headline, she was a professional. Someone who had worked tirelessly to earn respect in her field. She had spent years navigating a system stacked against her, constantly proving herself to colleagues, superiors, and the public. Every decision, every action was measured, precise, and careful, because she knew one mistake could be magnified. But that day in court, all of that respect seemed fragile. In an instant, the world saw her not as a professional, but as a target. The slap wasn't just physical, it was symbolic. It was a moment that stripped away the dignity she had built painstakingly over years. Her colleagues gasped, lawyers froze mid-sentence, and the audience in the gallery stared, stunned. People whispered, some with outrage, others in disbelief, but no one could stop the unfolding humiliation. Behind the courtroom doors, she had fought to be taken seriously, to be recognized for her knowledge and authority. Yet, in front of cameras and peers, her worth was questioned in the most violent way imaginable. The woman's story isn't just about one court incident. It's about the countless black women who face microaggressions, bias, and disrespect, even when they've earned every ounce of their credibility. It's about the emotional labor of constantly balancing professionalism with the heavy weight of racial stereotypes. And yet, despite the humiliation, she remained composed. Every second that passed was a test of her resilience, a silent declaration that she would not be defined by that moment alone. Her courage, even in shock, spoke volumes louder than any slap could. This story is not only about what happened in that courtroom, it's about why it matters. The context that transforms a single act into a reflection of systemic challenges, prejudice, and the ongoing struggle for respect and equality. Because to understand that one slap, we must first understand the life that preceded it, the challenges, the dedication, and the strength that made her stand tall, even when the world tried to push her down. The courtroom, moments before, had been tense but orderly. Lawyers were presenting evidence, the judge was reading statements, and the audience watched quietly, waiting for justice to unfold. Then, suddenly, everything spiraled out of control. The police officer approached her desk, his expression tense, and in a blink, the slap happened. Not a single word was exchanged, just a flash of aggression, a loud crack echoing across the courtroom, and stunned silence. Eyewitnesses later described the moment as surreal. Some froze in disbelief. Others instinctively reached for their phones, capturing a scene that would go viral within minutes. What made this incident even more shocking was the environment. A courtroom is meant to symbolize fairness, law, and control. Yet here, authority was misused in the most blatant, public way. The woman didn't retaliate. Instead, she took a deep breath, maintaining her composure under the watchful eyes of the judge, lawyers, and media. Her reaction, calm yet firm, contrasted sharply with the chaos that followed. The officer's behavior was questioned immediately by onlookers and media present, but the video would later reveal the deeper tension, power dynamics, systemic bias, and the daily challenges faced by Black women navigating authority. What the cameras caught was only a glimpse. Behind that slap were layers of history, prejudice, and inequality, factors that played out every day in offices, streets, and yes, even in institutions of law. This wasn't just a personal attack. It was a reflection of a system struggling to uphold fairness while still grappling with racial and gender biases. Within hours, the clip went viral on social media, igniting debates across platforms. Millions questioned not just the officer's conduct, but the very structures that allow such moments to happen. By analyzing this incident, we see more than a shocking act. We see the intersection of authority, race, and justice, all colliding in one courtroom, one moment that the world couldn't ignore. Because sometimes, a single moment can speak louder than volumes of testimony. And this was one of those moments. The video of that slap didn't stay confined to the courtroom walls. Within hours, it had flooded social media platforms, shared by millions, sparking outrage and debate across the globe. People were horrified. How could such blatant aggression occur in a space meant to uphold justice? Lawyers and legal experts began dissecting the incident. Was it a momentary lapse of judgment or a symptom of a deeper systemic problem? News outlets called for investigations, demanding accountability from law enforcement. The officer involved faced scrutiny, internal reviews, and mounting public pressure to answer for his actions. Meanwhile, the woman became an unwilling symbol. People across communities rallied in support, praising her composure and courage in the face of blatant injustice. Activists highlighted her story as part of a larger pattern of abuse, inequality, and disrespect faced by Black women in positions of authority. Online campaigns emerged rapidly. Hashtags, petitions, and calls for reform flooded timelines. Each post, tweet, and video analysis amplified the conversation, turning a single courtroom incident into a national discussion about race, power, and justice. Legal authorities responded slowly at first, but the mounting public pressure forced them to act. Investigations were launched, hearings scheduled, and statements issued. Every detail was scrutinized, from the officer's conduct to the courtroom protocols, in an attempt to prevent similar incidents in the future. Yet, the story wasn't just about legal proceedings. It was about society watching closely, learning, and demanding change. It was a moment that reminded millions that justice isn't only about laws. It's about how those laws are enforced, interpreted, and experienced by real people, particularly marginalized communities. Through the public outrage and the ensuing legal battle, one thing became clear: the incident was more than a slap. It was a wake-up call, a call to examine authority, respect, and equality. And while investigations continued behind closed doors, the global conversation had already begun, sparking awareness, dialogue, and, hopefully, change. Because sometimes, the aftermath is more powerful than the act itself. And this was one of those times. The slap in that courtroom was shocking, yes, but it was just one moment in a much larger story. A story that spans decades, even centuries, of racial inequality and systemic injustice. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a reflection of how authority and power are wielded differently depending on who you are. Black women, in particular, have faced the dual challenge of navigating both race and gender bias. From workplaces to courtrooms, from schools to streets, countless moments of disrespect, aggression, and dismissal occur, often unnoticed, underreported, or normalized. The courtroom slap was a dramatic example, but it echoes a persistent reality. The incident forced a broader conversation. How do systems of authority ensure fairness? How do we hold those in power accountable? How do we prevent prejudice from dictating who is protected and who is vulnerable? These questions became the focal point for journalists, activists, and communities demanding real change. At its core, this story is about accountability, not just for one officer, but for the institutions that allow such incidents to happen. It's about training, oversight, and, most importantly, culture change within systems of power. And it's about recognition, acknowledging the lived experiences of those who face injustice daily. For the woman involved, the slap became a catalyst. Her courage and dignity inspired millions to speak up, to question authority, and to demand reform. Social media, once a tool for entertainment, became a platform for justice, awareness, and solidarity. In the end, this incident reminds us that justice is not automatic. It must be protected, advocated for, and constantly reinforced. One slap, one moment of aggression, can reveal the cracks in a system. And when those cracks are exposed, society has the chance to fix them. Because true change doesn't come from silence. It comes from speaking out, standing tall, and refusing to accept injustice, no matter how powerful the authority may be. This courtroom moment, as shocking as it was, became more than a story. It became a lesson, a movement, and a call to action.